Hi, everyone. Before we get started with this episode of Waynesboro at Work, we have an exciting update. I interviewed Kate, one of the owners of Blue Ridge Bucha, and shortly after the interview, Blue Ridge Bucha was sold to a new owner named Hank. So we have his interview following Kate's in this episode. So stay tuned to the entire episode to get the full story. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Waynesboro at Work, a podcast where we interview business owners and entrepreneurs to learn more about their origin stories, the passion for their work, ways they benefit the community, and a lot more. I'm your host, Brooke Anderson, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Kate Zuckerman, the co-founder of Blue Ridge Bucha. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thanks for having me, Brooke. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Great. So before I jump in and learn more about your story, some people might not realize that the word bucha in your name is actually short for kombucha, which is a beverage. So explain to everyone exactly what kombucha is.
Yeah, kombucha is a fermented tea. It is served cold, and it is also non-alcoholic, unlike most fermented products.
And I feel like more and more over the years, kombucha is a word I've been hearing more and more about. So what makes kombucha so popular these days?
I think it's popular for a variety of reasons. I think one of the primary ones for us is that it really tastes good. So it's an alternative that people can choose. For example, instead of having alcohol, it's another way of enjoying a craft beverage. Instead of having a soda, it's a lower sugar, lower calorie alternative that's also equally refreshing.
Great. So you guys have started this business, Blue Ridge Bucha. What was the origin of the business?
Well, my husband Ethan had been brewing for about 9 or 10 years before we started the business, and he'd really been doing it as a hobby. He just loved developing new flavors. When he was in college, a roommate had brought the SCOBY, the symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, into the house for them to start playing around with fermentation. And so he just developed a real love for kombucha in that experiment, and we decided to launch the business really because collectively friends just kept saying, you really might want to consider starting a business with this. It's so good. It's so tasty. So we just looked at each other one day and just literally said, let's try. And then we started getting to work on how to actually take that dream and shape it into the reality of starting up a viable business.
Nice, nice. So I did a little research about kombucha, and it's an interesting process all the way around. And I have a kombucha expert here, so I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to kind of explain in layman's terms how you go from the beginning to the end of creating kombucha.
Yeah, so kombucha, we start with tea and sugar. You make a very, very sweet tea, way sweeter than you'd ever want to drink. Sugar is one of the things that fuels that SCOBY. So it actually is eating the sugar, assimilating it, and the resulting beverage is very low in sugar. So what you do is you take a little bit of starter from the last batch, you put it into that tea and sugar mixture, you put your SCOBY on top, and you allow it to ferment open to the air for a period of time. That's the first stage fermentation. Then you put it into a bright tank. That's where we flavor it, clarify it, and do a slow CO2 infusion to it to get the carbonation just where we want it. That's our second stage of fermentation. After that, it goes into a keg or goes into a bottle and goes to the customer.
Nice. And how do you get all the different flavors that you serve?
Yeah, we use all real flavors, which, meaning actual fruits, actual spices, actual herbs and teas. And so we like to kind of experiment with a variety of things. We have much more fruit forward flavors like our black raspberry. We have other things like our wild pear, which is a lot more savory and spice kind of going on there. Our winter flavor that's going to be coming out in a couple weeks is the Kombucha. And so that's actually a mixture of chai spice with kombucha base.
Nice. I'm definitely going to have to try that because chai is one of my favorite drinks of all time. So in terms of the process,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned that a keg could be involved, and I happen to know that you guys were kind of on the forefront of putting or making kombucha in a keg. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So when we started the business, we knew that we didn't want to have a negative impact on the, waste stream by producing a consumer product. So we wanted to figure out a way to take the waste out of the packaging. So we, had to really be pretty tenacious with the experimentation to figure out how do you get a live carbonated beverage into a keg. It's a little bit of a different beast than beer, not dissimilar, but, just had to kind of figure out what the parameters were to make it work. So we did, and we started with the keg model. For the first 6 years of business, that was the only way to get our kombucha was actually to bring in, one of your bottles and go and fill it up on draft.
Nice, nice. So you mentioned kind of the environmentally friendly nature of what you do, and I know that that's been a core principle in your business model. And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we one of the things that's been most inspiring to us throughout the business these past 10 years has been the customers reusing their bottles and hearing stories about the impact that that's had for people. So, if you need to bring your bottles to the store, maybe you're also going to remember to bring your bags to the store at the same time. So there's this kind of reuse ethos that people get turned on to when they get turned on to our products. And so, our hope is that people will not only, be refilling their kombucha bottles, but also just thinking about ways that they can minimize their impact in other, parts of their life too.
Right, right. So when you come and you get one of these refillable bottles, that can be washed hundreds of times. The caps are meant to be reused.
Exactly. Yep. So we have a couple of different ways it works. This is our screen printed bottle. So, you would actually purchase the bottle, own the bottle, and refill it as many times as you want. We then have this labeled bottle. So in our 6th year, we launched this product line. You can find this kombucha actually on the shelf at the store, which you couldn't before. You could only find it on draft. But this bottle is also refillable. So the glass is rated for carbonation. The cap is rated for carbonation. The label can be washed hundreds of times without falling off of the bottle. So you really can put it in your dishwasher, wash it out, bring it back, and refill.
Nice, nice. And to date, correct me if I'm wrong, but to date, you have saved 1.1 million bottles by using this business model. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So, it was actually last September of 2019, we threw a party in our tap room for the millionth bottle saved, which we had been looking at that for a while out in the future. I remember with our team years ago, we hit 250,000 and we all kind of realized like, wait a minute, that means someday we're going to hit 1 million. I wonder when that's going to happen. We had different guesses going on about when, and so it was last September that we hit 1 million bottles saved from people choosing to refill existing bottles rather than just go and purchase a new one.
Right. And that is incredible. I mean, 1.1 million bottles, that's hard to even visualize that many bottles. And that many, is fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. We did some fun stuff when we realized that that we were going to hit that number. Well, what does that actually mean? I think we found that we can go like from our brewery all the way up to the north end of Shenandoah National Park and back. Like if you would put the bottles line, nose to tip, if you will, all the way up and all the way back, it's like, that's a lot of bottles. That's a lot of space in a landfill. You know what I mean? So it feels like a tangible impact, which is really cool.
Amazing. Good job on that for sure. So when people come to Blue Bird's Bucha, what can they expect to find there?
Yeah, so our facility in Waynesboro is twofold purpose for us. One is to brew the kombucha that we send out to our retail accounts. So that might be grocery stores, restaurants, breweries, college campuses, and then also to come and visit the tap room and taste the kombucha and talk to people who are actually brewing the kombucha about the kombucha, try the different flavors. We offer tasting flights and things. We also have some flavors available just at the tap room that we don't have available anywhere else, limited releases that we do there, flavors we're experimenting with where we get customer feedback for flavors that are in development and things like that. So right now, our tap room hours are limited because of COVID, but we do have Wednesdays and Saturdays from 12 to 4 p.m. People can come by the tap room and pick up kombucha directly from the source.
Nice. And you guys were doing the kombucha in the keg for about 6 years. And then in 2018, you actually had your brick and mortar space. So in 2018, you're going along, for a couple of years, you're doing this business, and then you mentioned things changed, your taproom hours changed for COVID. But you're going along 2018, 2019, and then 2020 hits, and shortly into 2020, everything really changes. So what has the impact of the pandemic been for Blue Ridge Bucha?
It's been a little bit of a different year than we expected, to say the least. It's been challenging for our retail partners, many of them. This has been a harder year for smaller grocery stores, for restaurants, for breweries. This has just been a trickier year. So sales are not what they were prior to the pandemic. At the same time, we feel like the business is doing well, and we've had a lot of support from Waynesboro and from other partners. So we feel like we're in a good position, but it's been a tricky year like it has been for a lot of small businesses.
Right, right. So when you were first thinking about where you wanted to have your physical location, what ultimately made you decide on Waynesboro?
I would say it was sort of a magic combination. We found a building that we really liked that had some existing infrastructure that made sense for a brewery. Things like floor drains that were, sort of a dream were already existing, in the building. And we really liked the location on the east side of Waynesboro, right on that corridor coming down from the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it's the historic entrance into Waynesboro, right. And we like kind of being there to greet people as they come in, and we really love the synergy with some of the other businesses along that corridor, like Rockfish Gap Outfitters and Basic City Beer have been great partners to us, very welcoming. Another thing that really kind of nudged us in the Waynesboro direction was the warm welcome we had from the city when we were in our planning process and talking with economic development and tourism about the city and the city's interests. We just realized this is a city that's really vibrant and growing and seeking to attract small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so that was really appealing to us, to feel that real warm welcome and sense of support. And that's been there, for these past 2 years ever since. We just feel like we've had a very, good relationship with the city of Waynesboro and other small businesses throughout the area.
Nice, nice. So I know that you mentioned that your husband started experimenting with the kombucha in college, but it's one thing to have a product and then to launch a business. So where would you say that entrepreneurial spirit for both you and your husband really originates?
Well, I think we're both just people that believe that if you have a dream, you can make it happen. So it's something that we've often appreciated about each other, is that we share that in common, just this deep belief that if you want to do it, you can. So, we both really had a passion for the kombucha. We just love the taste of it. And so having that passion for what it is that you're doing, also when we realized how we could have such a positive, environmentally friendly model, that was another factor that was really inspiring for us, and that kind of keeps us feeling connected, to the company and to the mission, and to see the progress that we make over time, and to hear the stories from our customers about how it's changed their habits of reuse and things like that.
Great. So have you had other entrepreneurial endeavors prior to Blue Ridge Bucha?
Yeah, before Blue Ridge Bucha, I actually started a nonprofit organization in Charlottesville. It's called Common Ground Healing Arts. And they do acupuncture, yoga, meditation, and massage on a donation basis. They focus on serving communities that don't typically have access to preventative healthcare or to healing arts services.
Wow, so I kind of feel like you can see how it sort of comes full circle in the endeavors that you choose to be involved in, from the nonprofit, Blue Ridge Bucha, to the environmental model that you've dedicated to. So that's really nice to see.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I would say personal and environmental health are really important to us, and so it feels really good to be able to have the work that you do every day be contributing to that.
Right, right. So you've taken an idea, you've made it a business, you have almost completed a year of being a business owner in a pandemic.
Yeah.
What advice, that's a lot, what advice would you give other people that may be just considering whether or not they want to start their own business?
Yeah, I mean, part of me is just like, go for it, because why not, I think really though, having a passion for what it is that you want to do, something that you really feel like you want to wake up every day and do this, not just, for a month or a year, but ideally for many years, that it's something that you really want as part of your lifestyle. And there's just so many benefits in terms of the flexibility of being a small business owner. Like right now in a pandemic, we're able to be managing our kids' schooling. They're both in elementary school. And, we have the flexibility, my husband and I, to kind of work together to get our work done and also to give the kids the attention that they need right now. At the same time, the work is never done because if there's an emergency at midnight, you know, it's our emergency, So there's that balance, it's not all romantic, but I feel like it's totally worth it.
Right. And in our very first episode of Waynesboro at Work, we also had a husband and wife team on. And so one of the questions that I asked them was about any advice that they would give to other husband and wife teams. So do you have any advice for husband and wife teams in terms of working successfully together on a joint pursuit?
Yeah, I would say a sense of humor is the first thing that comes to mind, because there are going to be those challenges that come up. So just trying to keep it light and remember that you're on the same team, it would be, yeah, first thing that comes to mind for me.
Great. A sense of humor. Humor can get you through a lot of things, that's for sure.
Yes.
So I like that answer for sure. And so what does the future hold for Blue Ridge Bucha? What are your future plans?
Yeah, I mean, we are really excited right now about developing different flavors. So we've been working a lot on that in our, downtime, COVID downtime. And we really enjoy being a strong regional brand. So, Ethan and I have never had aspirations to take the company to a national scale. We like being the kombucha of choice, sort of the Mid-Atlantic and Blue Ridge region. So we want to continue to be strong in that area and just develop exciting new flavors that keep people coming back for more.
Great. Sounds great. So how can people learn more about Blue Ridge Bucha?
Yeah, I would suggest going to our website. There's some interesting, background on the company there. Also, we have a blog that gives some behind the scenes perspective. And then we're very active on Facebook and on Instagram as well.
Great. And I know that you mentioned all the great environmental work that you do there with the bottles and, being good neighbors, but you also carry some other products or are a station for people to access other products. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, we're a drop point for a number of different shares in the community. So Greenbrook Farm has a milk share that people come to our tap room to pick up their weekly milk or cream. We also do something similar with 4P Foods, where people can come pick up food shares that are coming predominantly from local farms. And during the summer months, we work with Tiny Flowers CSA. They have a flower weekly share out of the Waynesboro Valley, and we partner with them as well.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me today, telling me more about Blue Ridge Bucha and all the wonderful work that you're doing there. I think your environmental model is incredible, and it's just really nice to know that we have businesses and people that are very committed to the community and also, like you said, trying to be good neighbors to other businesses that are around as well. So thank you so much for joining me, Kate.
Yeah, thanks again for your interest, Brooke.
So as we mentioned at the top of the episode, there was an update to Blue Ridge Bucha after we conducted the interview with Kate. And so now I'm really, really excited to be joined by Hank Heiming, who is the new owner of Blue Ridge Bucha. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we did the interview with Kate, and then there was an exciting announcement made that you had become the new owner. So we wanted to sit down and chat with you and get to know you. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you're from, so we can learn a little bit more about you.
Great. Yeah. So I'm really excited to have bought this company. Couldn't be more excited. I'm a big fan of kombucha and an even bigger fan of Blue Ridge Bucha. So this is sort of my dream, both job but also thing to own. So I can't even describe how happy I am. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I my wife is from Virginia, and after school I brought her back to California, sort of under protest. And after a few years, she decided she'd had enough, and so she moved us back to Virginia, and we to the Richmond area, where we opened a home furnishings business that we had for most of the 2000s. And so I did that for until that business made it till about 2008, 2009, when the financial crisis hit. And then I transitioned into working in venture capital and with technology startups. And I worked for a number of different companies in Virginia and also all over the country. Ended up moving out to Silicon Valley for a few years, where I had a company that I was working for running the business operations. And I had the good fortune that we were able to sell that company in 2017. And I had a mild success, I guess you could say. Not a home run by any means, but maybe you could call it a single. Then we moved back to Richmond, and I've sort of been looking around ever since to find a business that I could buy and sort of be an owner operator, really sink my teeth into. And I found Blue Ridge Bucha earlier this year, and it immediately said, this is the one. And so I grabbed on with my claws and held on all through this COVID crisis and all through the various ups and downs of trying to get the company purchased. And we finally were able to close on it in November. So I'm really excited.
Nice. Well, definitely Blue Ridge Bucha is definitely a very loved business here in the Shenandoah Valley. And, they're really known for having this environmental business model. And kind of being at the gateway of where a lot of the outdoor activity in our area sort of converges. So what about what we've all grown to expect from Blue Ridge Bucha will remain? And then what are your plans for the future of the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to be honest, all the things that I think are core to what Blue Ridge Bucha is that's why I bought it. And I tend to keep all of that at the same or as the same as I possibly can. For instance, it's always been a core part of their mission and in their intentional way of doing business, which is their focus on sustainability.
Right.
I am also completely bought into that focus on sustainability. It's part of what attracted me to the brand. It's part of what originally attracted me to the kombucha in the first place. Back when it was still called Barefoot Bucha, they had the same mission, the same intentionality, and I intend to support it and try to use the resources that I hopefully will be able to bring to bear on this company to increase it over time. I want our sustainable mission to not just stay where it is, but we want to become even more sustainable. And I think of things like trying to become carbon neutral, trying to go completely solar, as viable things we could try to do in the next 5 to 10 years. I also love the fact that it's in Waynesboro, that it's at the kind of, I think of Waynesboro as sort of the gateway to the Blue Ridge Mountains, and also the Blue Ridge Mountains as the gateway to Waynesboro. And we are called Blue Ridge Bucha. I can't think of a better place to be. You've got the Appalachian Trail right there. You've got the Blue Ridge Parkway. You've got the main 64 kind of off ramps right there. So outdoor enthusiasts and tourists are going to be coming down on the East Main Street corridor into Waynesboro, and people that are trying to get to the Blue Ridge Mountains are going to be going out the East Main corridor up to those places. And so, to me, keeping the business in Waynesboro and keeping the same staff and keeping the same intentional mission to focus on sustainability, I think are all very important to the brand and to what I want to continue to do.
Nice. So you have had a few entrepreneurial endeavors, it sounds like. So one thing I always love to ask entrepreneurs is what advice they have for people thinking about going into entrepreneurship themselves, because there's a vast divide between thinking about doing it and then actually taking the leap to do it. So what advice do you have for folks?
Really, it's really, when I think about entrepreneurship, I kind of think of two sort of important things that you should keep in mind. The first, and this is a lesson that I learned going through my last business, and through the 2008 kind of 2009 financial crisis, is that being capitalized, adequately capitalized, well capitalized, is probably the most important thing you can do when you have your own business. And I think a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs and take the leap do it sort of with like the minimum amount of money they need. And I think the minimum amount you always find out is not enough. Everything costs twice as much and takes twice as long as you expect. And so I feel like this time around, I came in with that perspective and just made sure that we were able to, because this isn't an easy time for any business, right? And Bucha has also suffered through the COVID crisis. The 30% of the business is bars and restaurants, and they're just not open right now. So that hurts. So coming in, being aware of what it's like to run a business during a bad economic time, kind of gave me a lot of insight into how to capitalize the business and how to think about trying to run the business going forward. The other thing I will mention is, and maybe I won't go on as long about this, but being an entrepreneur takes a certain sort of risk tolerance. You sort of have to have a gut for being able to kind of write out all the things that are going to go wrong all the time. I think a lot of people who maybe don't like their boss or don't like their job think, well, I can just go out and start my own business. But that doesn't necessarily mean, just because you want to do it, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have this intestinal fortitude to kind of ride out all of the ups and downs. As someone who's done this before, I know I've got it in me. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I'm a first generation American. I just don't know. I think people really need to look into themselves and think hard, like, do I really want to have to deal with this risk and the potential issues and the potential financial losses? I mean, it's devastating to lose a business. It's taken me 10 years to recover from it and be back doing it again. So you have to make sure that you're willing to take on that sort of risk.
Right. That's great practical advice for sure. I think, like you said, there's a difference between thinking about it, actually doing it, and then there's a lot of thought that should go into that for folks. So thank you for that. So I know it hasn't been that long since you became the new owner of Blue Ridge Bucha, but what do you think makes Waynesboro such a great place to actually have a business?
Well, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's the proximity to the Blue Ridge Mountains and the fact that all of the outdoor enthusiasts and tourists that are kind of milling around up there on the trail or on the Blue Ridge Parkway, or just kind of up and around, they're going to see kind of East Main Street as the sort of gateway into Waynesboro, both the gateway in and also Waynesboro coming out East Main Street. That's the gateway to the mountains. And so I think for businesses that are interested in the tourist traffic or in the outdoor enthusiasts that are coming through town, I think Waynesboro is perfectly suited to that kind of business, especially kind of out where we are on East Main Street. It seems like a fantastic location. I also really have appreciated just the sort of business-friendly approach of the city of Waynesboro and the tourism group. They've been very supportive of our business and other local businesses. And they've already been meeting with me, and we're working on a couple different initiatives. And I really feel like Waynesboro seems like just sort of a pro-business sort of environment, and a place where you can see a lot of opportunity for growth, especially when you think about sort of people who are interested in the Blue Ridge Mountains and the tourism and the outdoors.
Nice, nice. Yeah. So is there any sort of inside scoop you can give us on what might be new at Blue Ridge Bucha?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that we're going to be working on. Um, the most obvious thing is, we're here in Virginia, and for various reasons, we've been sort of consciously geographically limited in where we're selling our products. So we're here in Virginia, we're in Maryland, we're in Pennsylvania, DC. To me, it seems like an obvious next step to kind of head south and to head west. So we're going to be working on, in the next quarter or two, expanding into Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and get our brand out in new chains that are more southern focused, as opposed to the sort of the chains we're in now, which are more northern focused.
Okay.
So that's going to be a great avenue for growth that we expect to see in 2021, is growing our marketing and our sales and our distribution networks to go that way instead of north. The other major initiative, and this is probably more interesting than just saying I'm going to be in more stores, is we're actively developing a hard kombucha line, which is so kombucha is, in its current form, is non-alcoholic. It's less than 0.5% alcohol. Allows it to be sold anywhere. We're consciously going to develop an alcoholic kombucha, which will have an ABV. We'll probably do a variety, but maybe the lowest will be 4.5%, sort of a session kombucha, and then maybe have a couple at 5.5, and maybe go for one kind of 7%er for the nights you really want to have a drink. So we're developing flavors right now and recipes, and working on the formulation and labeling. And we're in process of getting our licenses, our ABC licenses. And so I would expect that, and we also have customers that are already talking to us about carrying us. So yeah, I would expect us to have hard kombucha on the shelves probably by the beginning of the second quarter, which is exciting.
That is really exciting. Yes, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that.
And I guess I could say one more thing.
Sure.
The way to think of hard kombucha is that it's not going to be as heavy or as high calorie as sort of a craft beer.
Okay.
Right. It's not going to be like an IPA with all those calories and that kind of real heaviness to it. But it also will have that sort of kombucha mouth feel and kind of flavor that you don't necessarily get from a hard seltzer. So it's sort of in the middle of like the IPAs and the hard seltzers, but it'll have more sort of a better feeling in your mouth and more flavor than a hard seltzer would have. But it's not going all the way towards beer, and it's still low calorie. So right. It actually, I think, will sit in a really interesting spot in the market.
Yeah, that sounds great for sure. Well, Hank, thank you so much for taking some time to join me today. And just on behalf of myself and everybody with Waynesboro at Work, we just welcome you to the community, and we're really glad to get to know you a little bit better today.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great. So everybody that is listening, make sure that you tune in. We have new episodes of Waynesboro at Work every single month. You can also find the video version on YouTube. Of course, you can hear the podcast on any of your favorite podcast apps. And if you want to learn more about Waynesboro, make sure you go check out Visit Waynesboro, Grow Waynesboro, and Waynesboro Economic Development. Until next time, be safe and well.